When my wife, Emily, and I bought our first house, we were thrilled. It was a charming old house with a big garden, and the price was surprisingly low. The only downside was that it was right next to an old graveyard. We didn't think much of it at first. We even thought it added some character to the place. Our excitement began to fade after the first few nights. It started with small things: doors creaking open on their own, cold spots in certain rooms, and strange noises in the middle of the night. We shrugged it off as the house settling, but deep down, I felt uneasy. One night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. I turned to Emily, but she was fast asleep. The whispers seemed to be coming from the hallway. My heart pounded as I got out of bed and slowly opened the door. The hallway was empty, but the whispers continued, growing louder. I followed the sound to the living room. There, standing in the dim light, were two ghostly figures. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. They were a man and a woman, their faces pale and sorrowful. They looked at me with hollow eyes, and I could feel their pain. "We lived here once," the woman whispered. "We died here." Before I could react, they vanished. I stood there, shaking, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. The next morning, I told Emily about the ghosts. She was skeptical at first, but that changed when she saw them herself the following night. We began researching the history of the house and the graveyard. We discovered that the graves closest to our house were of people who had lived there. Each had died under mysterious circumstances. We realized that the ghosts were trying to tell us something. They wanted us to solve the mystery of their deaths. We had until the next new moon to figure it out. If we didn't, we feared we would join them in the graveyard. We started by looking through old newspapers and town records. We found out that the house had a dark history. The previous owners had all died within a year of moving in, and their deaths were never explained. The more we uncovered, the more frightened we became. One night, as we were poring over old documents, the room grew cold. The ghosts appeared again, this time more distressed. "Hurry," the man said. "The new moon is near." Desperation pushed us to dig deeper. We found a hidden journal in the attic, belonging to the first owner of the house, a man named Thomas. The journal detailed strange occurrences, much like what we were experiencing. In the final entry, Thomas wrote about a curse placed on the house by a witch who had been wronged by the original builders. To break the curse, Thomas had tried to perform a ritual, but he had failed and died the next day. We realized we had to finish what he started. The journal included instructions for the ritual, but it required specific items that we had to gather. With only 2 days left, Emily and I raced against time. We found the items: a silver dagger, a mirror, and a few herbs. On the night of the new moon, we prepared the ritual in the living room, as the journal instructed. The air was thick with tension, and the house seemed to groan in anticipation. As we began the ritual, the ghosts appeared, watching us silently. I could feel their fear and hope. We followed the steps carefully, chanting the words written in the journal. Suddenly, the room filled with a blinding light, and the ground trembled. The ghosts screamed, their voices mingling with the howling wind. And then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. The light faded, and the house was silent. The ghosts were gone. Emily and I looked at each other, relief washing over us. We had done it. We had broken the curse. The next morning, we visited the graveyard. The gravestones of the former residents now looked peaceful, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. We placed flowers on their graves, thanking them for guiding us. Our house felt different after that night. The cold spots and strange noises were gone. We knew we had saved ourselves from a terrible fate and given peace to those who had suffered before us. Living next to a graveyard no longer felt eerie. Instead, it felt like we were among friends who had finally found their rest.